Hey everybody, I haven't made a video in a while, so I'm going to try to give it a go tonight. Hopefully put something like of value that I can feel decent about posting, get it out. But I don't really know what I want to talk about. I always have so much that I want to say, and it's definitely, I think, going to be a lifelong challenge for me, just expressing myself verbally and even sometimes non-verbally, but it's like just socializing in any way. There's that real pull to the ego, to old patterns, to just really still struggling with confidence in my words without overanalyzing, comparing, and being aware that I compare myself, my worth, my value, my direction, my goals. I compared everything about my consciousness and my cognizant life to other people. And that is a killer. That is such a killer. It is just a losing comparison every single time, always, like, if I've noticed when I go to compare myself to someone else, like in any way, even if it feels like, even if I'm not aware of it, like literally like measuring myself to someone, even if I'm not aware of it, I don't have, I feel like I'm doing it in a helpful way. Like with some of the spiritual YouTubers that I like, I found, after months and months of doing so, for one example, I found that I was comparing myself and my meditation practice and like my self-care practice to a famous millionaire spiritual YouTuber. And I've mentioned it before, but when I caught myself doing that, like I realized what I was doing, comparing myself to his schedule. I was like, my God, he's a millionaire who is childless. Like, why am I doing that? I'm new to the spiritual awakening, self-love scene. Like, my God. And I always did that, like compared myself and to everyone else, and just looking for that validation and looking for guidance, and just to say, hey, yeah, go here, do this. This is the way. And it was because I just had no, because I didn't know myself. I didn't trust my voice. I didn't trust my intuition. So that's been huge, having that perspective shift. But have you noticed something that I've been noticing a lot lately is like it's seemingly influx of Kurt Cobain / Nirvana t-shirts. And maybe it's me, because I've noticed it's always been a pet peeve of mine when I see people wear shirts and I think pretty confidently, man, they don't listen to that. That's just such a pet peeve when someone wears a music shirt or a band, a singer, whatever, and I feel confident that that's not really, they might have like one song, but they're not like a true fan. Of course, like the Kardashians, like what about any of them is like authentic? I have no idea. Is there a single thing? But I remember like a few years back, like maybe they still do, like for whatever reason, the Kardashians, I would see photos of them, and I don't search the Kardashians. I don't like watch them. Have I watched them? I'm ashamed to say I have, but was that years and years and years ago? Yes, it has been over 5 years ago since I've watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It's probably been like 8 years ago if I really think about it. But the point is I don't look for their content. But they were, I saw that they were, like a few of them were wearing like death metal t-shirts. And I'm like, why? I just don't, it's so strange, man. Looking at pop culture, since I've really kind of stepped into being conscious and cognizant of myself, and since I've stepped into being aware of myself in terms of my thoughts, being aware of my perspective, really just creating the life I want to. How in the hell do you find a passion, live your passion, create your life, live your best life, be aligned with your higher self? How do you do that? You know, for me, I had to work on that foundation because perspective is everything. As I've said before, I've really learned perspective is how you look at something is everything. It's going to affect your health, your mental health, your mood, your future. You know, right now, this present moment is going to dictate, you know, the next moment, the next moment, the next moment. That's life, you know. It's just an elongated series of, you know, next. That's a weird word to make plural, but yeah, so perspective is everything, because, you know, what is now is going to be your future, right? Because it's all one and the same. And I really had to forgive myself, love myself, get to know myself, get to trust myself, begin to foster that relationship and be aware of my thoughts, you know, reinforced like what was working and let other things go, all that good stuff. You know, it all comes down to perspective. And since I've been kind of standing more and more in my own autonomy and just living life for myself, it's not that I feel further removed from people and pop culture and society, because I always felt like an outsider. I swear I felt like I was part ghost. Like I wasn't fully alive or fully a human. I felt like a different species sometimes. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. But I felt like I was a part ghost, because I just felt like life was something I was like watching. Like there was practically like, you know, a barrier up that only I could see, but I couldn't see it. I could feel it always. And when I would watch life happen to other people, I was like, God, I don't feel like I fit in with this. And now that I'm starting to live from the perspective of, hey, my perspective was screwed up. I didn't fit in with myself, so I didn't fit in, of course, anywhere I went or whatever I did. You know, I wasn't going to fit because I had to fit in with myself and get the present moment perspective in check and start to have those cognizant thoughts of just sitting with myself and noticing my thoughts without judgment, accepting myself. It's beautiful, right? So now that, you know, I'm kind of standing on my own 2 feet in every sense of the word, I'm looking at the external and I'm like, damn, no wonder I felt like I didn't fit in. My perspective was, for one, I was all screwed up, inside out, like upside down, turned around in like every way. But exhibit B is like, this world is screwed up, man. Like, it is crazy. And the Kardashians are like the epitome, are celebrities in the United States. It's like, you know, as a former just fan of all things celebrity world, truly, I was a fan as an adolescent through young adulthood. Throughout my 20s, I was a true fan of Hollywood and of celebrities. It's just like, you know, so I'm coming at it from that firsthand experience of like worshiping these like false idols. I mean, they seemed pretty real to me, you know? But my God, like, no wonder this shit is so crazy. And it's like the Kardashians don't like death metal, period. They don't. I'm sorry. Like, you know, I just don't get it. And when I see all this with Kurt Cobain, I kind of can't help but feel a tinge of the same feelings. Like, you know, I just don't think everybody that's like rocking a Kurt Cobain shirt really is like a super fan. It's so annoying. And I'm a little bit triggered by it as well, because I have an interesting relationship with like the 27 Club, you know, Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, what, Chris Farley, Jim Morrison, it was Tupac, I think. There's like a lot. I have this weird like relationship because as an addict, I felt like they were the ultimate. You know, they were so lucky to be to have the best of both worlds, and I don't understand how anybody can, like, I couldn't even maintain like the basics with self-care when I was in addiction. I don't know how anybody could be an addict and also have a hobby or have a passion that they lived. I guess it makes sense with music. And if you get discovered young, I could see how it happens, but that's just like was so far removed from my experience and most addicts' experience. And that's what makes me so, not really anymore, but made me so jealous about everyone that's in that very, most infamous club, is that, God, it's when you've dealt with suicidal ideation, or kind of like this passive suicidal flirtation. And with me, it was very passive because I never considered myself a depressed person, or I always considered myself oddly optimistic considering the circumstances. But when you deal with that, just kind of that darkness that your mind can get in and kind of wallow in, it's like there's that weird almost pedestal of taking, it's called the coward's way out, but at the same time, we all know it does take a certain level of balls to follow through with that act. But not that everyone in the club, did that intentionally. But so with Kurt Cobain, it's like, okay, he did it deliberately. He chose to do that. Plus he's immortal, man. These people, it's like, yeah, you give up your life, but you are immortal. You're loved forever, forever young, immortal, loved all over the world. Every addict should be so lucky. And it's the polar opposite for the vast majority of addicts, I mean, and it's frustrating because I've talked to so many people that really, look down on drug addiction and where it's so misunderstood and stigmatized, there's that saying like a bad apple, will ruin the bunch or whatever. And that's true to the nth degree for addicts. It's like every addict is looked at as like the biggest piece of shit addict that It's like, well, that's an addict for you. And it's like, most addicts aren't thieves. Of course, some people are going to be, some addicts are going to be like those grimy pieces of shit that will like steal candy from a baby or something. But a lot of addicts are not like that. We are, and we harm ourselves far more than anybody else. And yeah, we're shitty friends. We're not good company, but, we have to live with ourselves. And so imagine how we feel, but there's like never that grace for the most part given to addicts. But even people that can't stand addicts and will flat out say, I've had so many people say to me and not think twice, oh God, I can't stand a drug addict. Like, I've never robbed anyone, in my life. I was never like a thief. I did grimy things, sex work. That is something I had to get over and accept. And was traumatizing, and sexual assaults that came from the year to 14-month period when I was homeless and into sex work. I was sexually assaulted twice. So there's a lot of trauma and a lot of things that were inflicted and a lot of grimy things I did. And I'm not proud of the person that I was in my active addiction, but at the same time, I wasn't, some piece of shit thief, right? I'm sorry, Walmart does not count. I'm not talking about corporations. I'm talking about homes. And, because corporations are thieves. But anyway, but I've had people, just say to me, God, I hate drug addicts. Like they're all, just generalize, but yet love their favorite, drug addicted celebrity. And it's like, my God, if that person, if a millionaire who has a dream life and a dream job and just a dream come true couldn't do it, then how is the average person supposed to make it? And if they're put on a pedestal just because they had a kick-ass job and they're dead yet immortal, then why isn't the average addict given as much grace, if not a million times more so, Because if you can find a reason to use when you're a millionaire and beloved, living your dream life, and you're a millionaire and be loved the world over. And I've said this before, I'm sorry if I repeat, but if you can't find happiness, peace of mind, and still feel the need to poison yourself daily and remain stuck in that cycle, then how is the average anonymous, hopeless, no hope in sight, no hope as far as the eye can see, addict and bumfuck nowhere supposed to be able to, to make it? And something with Kurt too, also another side note, and I'm sorry if I repeat this, it's just like I've seen one too many Kurt Cobain shirts today, I don't know, and it's nothing against him. My God, please, it's nothing at all. It's just a case for a little bit maybe of compassion when it comes to the average everyday anonymous addict, because the fact is that Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain, I saw a montage of heck. I have been like them. I have known so many people like them. And it looks a hell of a lot different when you are a young addicted couple trying to raise a young an infant child in a trailer park versus when you're a young addicted couple trying to raise an infant child, and you're a celebrity. That looks a hell of a lot different, and it hits a hell of a lot different, So if you're just going to be like, oh man, rock and roll, everybody has something to offer. Everybody has something to offer, and very few people get the opportunity and have the resources and have the financial freedom, i.e. freedom, which of course, you are free. It has nothing to do with finances. That's a state of mind, as is rich and poor is also a state of mind. But as I've said before, poverty is measurable, right? And it's just different when you're having to struggle to keep food on the table, to keep the lights on, to keep a table, versus when you can just pluck a guitar in the corner and, do a show and get the praise of hundreds of thousands of people, just choose to do that if you want to, But something that bothers me is that I freaking love Courtney Love. I love her. I think she's a living legend. She is one of the rarest breeds, which is a true female rock star. I love her so much. And I think it's been like a double-edged sword, because she got, even before the way it all went down, she was getting a lot of hate, by Nirvana fans. And I just think it is so incredibly sexist, short-sighted, and patriarchal, really, to think that Courtney had anything to do with Kurt's actions. That is so silly. That is so silly. You can tell. I feel like it's obvious, and this also hits personally because I have been, when I became an addict at age 21, my boyfriend committed suicide. He referenced me in his suicide note. We were very much in love. And yeah, because of that, I started to have these spiritual experiences and kind of open up my my soul to the idea of energy and some type of consciousness continuing beyond just like the physical plane and beyond this life. And then 13 years later, at the tail end of my addiction, at 34, you know, it was the murder suicide. And that kind of opened me up to the fact that, you know, all evil is necessary evil. Evil is relative. No one is one-dimensional. But at the same time, when someone says they are something, and when a guy tells you he is a bad guy, believe him. And we are what we want to be. And if you want to be evil, you know, if someone wants to be that darkness, then they are. It's not up to me. It's not my job or responsibility to like show them otherwise. But anyway, because I did have those two relationships, I know that in the midst of pain, everyone's looking for a cause, and the surviving partner that is female is a really easy scapegoat to be like, oh, this is your fault. And so I know it was just hurt and pain, and the pain of losing someone who was such a talented, iconic musician. You know, it was easy to be like, oh, Courtney did it, you know. Hell no. No way. It was obvious that her pain was real. It was obvious his pain was real. He wrote about it. He sung about it. The writing was on the wall. And because we have idolized him, you know, people didn't want to read. We can't read what our eyes will not let us read. People didn't want to read the writing that was all over the wall. And finally, to wrap it up, I think, in my opinion, what happened, obviously, how I was like a kid when Kurt Cobain killed himself, but obviously I wasn't there. None of us were. But in my opinion, what happened that night that I've not heard actually mentioned before is one of the arguments that, oh, somehow Courtney did that, was that one of the arguments is he had an impossible amount of drugs in his system, that he had too many drugs in his system to pull a trigger. And I think what he did was he knew he felt the trappings of fame. He had that dream life. He had everything he could have ever dreamed of. And he was still miserable, because it's all a matter of perspective. Whether you are a rock star or a homeless person, it's all a matter of perspective. And he realized that he was trapped. He realized that he had all of this and he was still unhappy. He couldn't kick, you know, his demons. And I think he holed himself up in that room and was looking to overdose that night. And if he did not overdose, I think he had a moment of fuck it and just did it when he came to. But I think he had such an extreme amount of drugs in his system because, for one, he's a rock star and his tolerance was astronomical. I used to be so jealous of millionaires, and specifically rock stars, and their access, their financial freedom to be the junkie that I always wanted to be. But I think he had that many drugs in his system because he was looking to overdose, and he had the gun there strictly as backup in case he did not. And that's what happened. I think he probably nodded out for quite some time, was very close to overdose, and then came to just long enough to say, fuck it, plan B. And that's what happened. That's why there were so many drugs in his system. And I know for a fact, I have had so many people don't understand how quickly your tolerance raises and how much the body can withstand. People don't understand it. And in addiction, really, I've seen it a lot of times. I've seen like COs, judges, like lawyers, people that have to like look at your analysis tests and make a decision and talk to addicts one-on-one. I've heard so many comments myself in the past of them saying, I don't even know how you had that in your system. Wow, I've never seen somebody have this many drugs in their system. I watched somebody suck up the jelly out of a fentanyl patch and shoot it and be just fine. Like stick a needle with straight up pure liquid fentanyl straight into their vein. And I thought for sure, oh my God, that's too much. They're gonna drop dead right in front of my eyes. and they were fine. Yeah, they were fucked up, but they did not overdose. It's crazy when you get a tolerance and when you are seriously in the throes of addiction, how much how much of a tolerance you can acquire and how much drugs you can have in your system. And it seems like way too much because you're looking at a single pill from the outside in. It's like, okay, well, this is a single pill. Take 1 to 2 a day for like terminal cancer patients. And I was sitting there doing like, 4, I only did that one time, but I did 4 Dilaudids, K4s in one shot. And that was, it was filled like almost the entire syringe was as full as possible. It was like really easy to clog, so I didn't do that, and I didn't have the financial means to do it. But the point is I was doing a lot of pills, Oxy 80s, Dilaudids, and then like fentanyl too. It's crazy the amount of drugs that I know were in my system, and I was in poverty. Obviously, I was spending hundreds of dollars at the peak of my addiction, but if I had thousands of dollars to spend a day on drugs, we spend as much as we can. The tolerance, I know because like I said, I've seen it firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. People that are looking out from the outside in cannot fathom the tolerance that the average addict junkie can acquire. Because it just seems like, because the normal outside in standard is like take 1 pill, and you're taking, 5 or 6, plus whatever else, plus just like, a bag or 2 or 3 or, a half gram. It was astronomical. I cannot imagine. His tolerance was probably through the roof, and I think he was looking to overdose, and that was a backup if he came to, and I think he came to just long enough. I've nodded out for hours before too, and almost overdosed, but just happened to, through the grace of God, thank you God, made it through to the other side so I can, live to tell a cautionary tale. But I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Let me just say, in summary, perspective is everything. Get it right. Love yourself. Be aware that you can change your mind. Don't wear shirts by musicians if you don't listen to their music, please. Pet peeve of mine. Kurt Cobain was amazing. Everyone in the 27 Club was amazing. Every addict should be so lucky. I say that being facetious, but I also, like I said, say that coming from the place of have compassion. If you're going to have so much compassion and an understanding to the average multimillionaire dream job addict, please try to think, man, the difference between, a celebrity that's an addict and the person staying on the street corner that's an addict, that's circumstance, that's the only difference. At our hearts, we are all the same, and Courtney Love is like, I love her, no pun intended. She's amazing. She is very underrated. She's a living legend. She's a true rock star, and she's so talented. Live Through This is one of Live Through This is a phenomenal album. So y'all have a good night.